Module 3, USA Wrestling's Athlete Development Model, or ADM, and your coaching philosophy. Let's dive right into the Athlete Development Model. Here's an international wrestler that I've enjoyed following for the last few years. Tasmuradov is from Uzbekistan. He's in the green and red. He's about to be scored on by his opponent, but watch the athleticism he'll use here to execute a one-handed cartwheel in order to score the points on his opponent. It even kind of confuses the official. You can notice in that clip the official actually starts to raise the points for the other wrestler. Again, great look at athleticism. What we've got to really focus on is understanding that that kind of athleticism starts by creating fun environments that are athletically based at the youth level. Long-term success in any sport starts by developing athletes and a love for the sport during their early years. So let's encourage fun while building athletes first. Here's a great video clip by two-time Olympian Ahad Javansalai, who's a Greco-Roman coach at Cornell University.
Now, I want to see if you can do that. We go over there with one leg and come back like boom, like this, all the way there and come back backward. Beautiful. Nice. So can you do that? You can. No, you can. Yeah, nice. See, getting better.
What's great about this clip is you can see that the older girl does this first and does it without any problem. And as the younger athlete starts to do it, you can see his coordination just hasn't caught up. He's 8 years younger than she is. So in this sequence, we'll be able to take younger athletes, develop athleticism into the practices so that they can learn these skills so that when they get to be the older ages, they'll be able to execute techniques that require these athletic movements. Podium success at elite level starts near age 15. That success tends to cap around age 20 to 21 and then declines as athletes get older. This is podium success for all sports. What we want at USA Wrestling is to be able to extend that winning curve, but not that we want 13 and 14-year-old champions. We want to make sure that we extend the life of our champions so that after they win an Olympics at age 19, 20, maybe even 24, then they can go on for 2, 3, or 4 four-year Olympic cycles. USA Hockey was one of the first national governing bodies to adapt an athlete development model. And while it is the gold standard for today's coaching development, it did face a lot of resistance when it was first introduced. Coaches and parents thought that these coaching philosophies would hold back the development of their kids, but today we know that proper coaching philosophies actually improve our sport, increase participation, and improve the retention of our athletes. Let's listen to one of the coach educators from USA Hockey.
I think our ADM coaches have to be very much in tune with the amount of fun and engagement their players have, and not just at the youngest levels, but at every age level. Hockey is a hard sport to play. It's a difficult sport to master. And if we're going to keep kids in the game, we're going to keep them in tune with their development, in tune with getting better, we need to make sure that first and foremost they want to come to the rink. And the only way they want to come to the rink is if you make practice fun. You have to have a fun environment. It has to be engaging. And we're not talking about unstructured, undisciplined environment. We're talking about the correct age-appropriate practice environment where a player can't wait to come back and do it again.
When do you want athletes to peak? Do you want that 10-year competitive window to start when they're 5? How about when they're 12? Maybe a different age range? Here's a look at the USA Wrestling Athlete Development Model. The Athlete Development Model is a guide for parents and coaches to help plan levels of practice and competition, focusing on key developmental areas and ages. Training based on age and ability, proper ratios of practice to competition. At a minimum, athletes should be practicing 70% of the time while competing about 30% of the time. Focus on building athleticism and what we call free play. Free play means that the adults don't set the rules, they don't handle the conflicts, the kids learn to deal with these issues on their own. In the athlete development model, you can see that these are based on age-based training guidelines. In red, you'll see the areas for kids age 5 to 8 as well as age 9 to 12. That's because 70% of our kids are quitting competitive sports by age 13, won't even make it to the high school level if we don't do a good job of coaching them at the younger ages. So let's take a look. For the youth age groups, the key concepts that we're looking at are things like focusing on fun, games, and activities, daily agility skills, balance and coordination drills, no more than 5 to 12 hours per week of physical activity. That includes wrestling and competitions. For a 5-year-old, we recommend about 5 hours. For a 12-year-old, about 12 hours. You can kind of see that we're basing the number of hours each week that an athlete uses focused and organized training is based on the age of the athlete. USA Wrestling recommends no weight loss other than for health reasons. Kids age 12 and below need to have fun, and it's not fun to starve. It's certainly not fun to manage weight. We want kids to eat healthy, balanced diets, and we want them to have fun while they compete. We want them to learn that wrestling has basic rules and techniques, that there aren't just one-move wonders. Headlocks at an early age might be a great skill to win a few matches, but at the end, kids are going to catch up to learning that that's the only technique you have. That can be frustrating for a young person. So in the early years, let's make sure that we get basic techniques trained. Also to learn respect for opponents, coaches, and officials. And they can only learn respect for others if they see that example from their coaches and their parents. Tips for parents in the athlete development model include knowing that it's essential for your child to learn basic fundamental movement skills. Typically, these skills are done with games or drills at the beginning of a practice, things like a sit-out turn-in drill or a hip heist drill. It's important that parents know that early success is not a good indicator of future success in wrestling or in any sport. Just focus on providing a fun and positive environment so your child can enjoy wrestling well into the next age group. We never want to be our kid's last coach. It's okay to ask your child about practice and events, but please respect their privacy. If they choose not to talk about practice, give them some space. Focus on the positives, not the negatives. Children don't fully understand competition at ages 12 and below. What they do understand is wanting to make their parents and their coaches happy. Mistakes at this age are okay and should be encouraged. The kids will learn from them. Here's some tips for coaches at the youth age groups. For kids 5 to 8, we recommend 2 to 3 practices a week of only about 45 to 60 minutes. This allows you, as the coach, an opportunity to keep practice fun, focused, get the kids in and out so that they can enjoy other activities as well. For coaches at this, again, 5 to 8-year-old age group, tumbling and fun should be the key concepts. There should be more free play than technical teaching. We also recommend about 10 to 25 matches per year for kids who fall into this age group. Once we go up to the age group 9 to 12, you'll notice that we can go to 4 to 6 practices a week for maybe 60 to 90 minutes. As we get older, we can handle more responsibility, more pressure, and we'll have more of an ability to be able to focus. We want to encourage routine and repetitions as a coach for this age group. Routine like daily drills, daily warm-ups, and cool-downs. Group and individual training now at this level can start to happen. We could start some private lessons, again, just a few, A month would be more than enough. But starting group and individual private lessons at this age group will give a child a chance to develop their skills, but also understand how to keep that in balance in life. At this age group, we recommend about 20 to 40 matches per year. So let's talk about the difference between competition or practices for developing your young athlete. Here's a standard competition on a Saturday. We're up early in the morning, out of the house early in the morning. We drive to a competition. We sit at a tournament for 6 to 8 hours throughout the day, maybe more. Your athlete will get 2 to 3 matches in, and then you're home in the evening. For a half of a day, we got 18 minutes of wrestling in for our young athlete. But let's take a look at just a practice on that same day. We can get up a little later, out of the house a little later. Shorter drive, shorter duration at a competition site or a practice site, and then we're home by noon with the opportunity to enjoy Saturday football games and other family activities. In that 4-hour day, we gained 60 to 120 minutes of skills, whereas opposed to a half day of competition, we only gained 18 minutes of live wrestling. And that live wrestling may have reinforced some bad habits that we have. Even if parents and coaches know and understand age-appropriate principles for children, I think they would be reluctant to accept them because they would fear their child would fall behind. That's a quote from Kirk Anderson, the Director of Coaching Education for the U.S. Tennis Association. Why do you think that is? Let's take a few minutes over the next few video clips from a TED Talk to see how parenting might get involved in this process.
You know, I didn't set out to be a parenting expert. In fact, I'm not very interested in parenting per se. It's just that there's a certain style of parenting these days that is kind of messing up kids, impeding their chances to develop into their selves. There's a certain style of parenting these days that's getting in the way. I guess what I'm saying is we spend a lot of time being very concerned about parents who aren't involved enough in the lives of their kids and their education or their upbringing, and rightly so. But at the other end of the spectrum, there's a lot of harm going on there as well, where parents feel a kid can't be successful unless the parent is protecting and preventing at every turn, and hovering over every happening, and micromanaging every moment, and steering their kid towards some small subset of colleges and careers. When we raise kids this way, and I'll say we, because Lord knows in raising my 2 teenagers, I've had these tendencies myself, our kids end up leading a kind of checklisted childhood. And here's what the checklisted childhood looks like. We keep them safe and sound and fed and watered. And then we want to be sure they go to the right schools, but not just that they're in the right classes at the right schools, and that they get the right grades in the right classes in the right schools. But not just the grades, the scores. And not just the grades and scores, but the accolades and the awards, and the sports and the activities and the leadership. We tell our kids, don't just join a club, start a club, because colleges want to see that. And check the box for community service. I mean, show the colleges you care about others. And all of this is done to some hoped-for degree of perfection. We expect our kids to perform at a level of perfection we were never asked to perform at ourselves. And so because so much is required, we think, well then of course we parents have to argue with every teacher and principal and coach and referee and act like our kids' concierge and personal handler.
Do you ever see this in your community? How about on your team or in your home? We're not trying to tell you how to be a parent by any stretch. But what we do think is that it's always good to take a critical look at how we can constantly improve on how we work with our kids. Let's go back to the video.
And here's what it feels like to be a kid in this checklisted childhood. First of all, there's no time for free play. There's no room in the afternoons because everything has to be enriching, we think. It's as if every piece of homework, every quiz, every activity is a make or break moment for this future we have in mind for them. And we absolve them of helping out around the house. And we even absolve them of getting enough sleep as long as they're checking off the items on their checklist. And in the checklisted childhood, we say we just want them to be happy. But when they come home from school, what we ask about all too often first is their homework and their grades. And they see in our faces that our approval, that our love, that their very worth comes from A's.
Or maybe when they come home from practice, they feel that their worth is based on how practice went. We ask things often of our kids like, how was practice? But think about some specific questions you could ask them that they won't be able to reply with, it was okay, or it was great, or it wasn't so good. Maybe we could say, what was your favorite thing at practice today? We can start to learn a little bit more about our child's interests that way as well. Here you can see a picture of a young athlete with trophies and awards. I'm not saying this is a bad or a good picture. I'm just trying to raise a little bit of awareness to a situation where sometimes we make winning the identity of our children. Is it possible that your child feels that your love is dependent on his or her success in school or in sports? Let's check back some video.
And when they get to high school, they don't say, well, what might I be interested in studying or doing as an activity? They go to counselors and they say, what do I need to do to get into the right college? And then when the grades start to roll in high school and they're getting some B's or, God forbid, some C's, they frantically text their friends and say, has anyone ever gotten into the right college with these grades? And our kids, regardless of where they end up at the end of high school, they're breathless, they're brittle, they're a little burned out, they're a little old before their time, wishing the grown-ups in their lives had said, what you've done is enough, this effort you've put forth in childhood is enough. And they're withering now under high rates of anxiety and depression, and some of them are wondering, will this life ever turn out to have been worth it?
Do you think your kids might feel these types of pressures?
We send our children the message, hey kid, I don't think you can actually achieve any of this without me. And so with our overhelp, our overprotection, overdirection, and handholding, we deprive our kids of the chance to build self-efficacy, which is a really fundamental tenet of the human psyche, far more important than that self-esteem they get every time we applaud. Self-efficacy is built when one sees that one's own actions lead to outcomes, not, there you go. Not one's parents' actions on one's behalf, but when one's own actions lead to outcomes. So simply put, if our children are to develop self-efficacy, and they must, then they have to do a whole lot more of the thinking, planning, deciding, doing, hoping, coping, trial and error, dreaming and experiencing of life for themselves.
So self-efficacy is a person's beliefs about their ability to perform in different situations. How do we keep kids and teach them self-efficacy? Here's a great video clip from 2016 Olympic gold medalist Helen Maroulis.
And I want to talk about your mom because you mentioned something she did in that story, which I find is amazing and tough to do as a parent. I can imagine she saw you at one of the practices and she could see that look in your eyes. And she just kind of walked out of the gym and said, you're on your own. And it's not in words, but she went to the car, correct?
Yeah, so, and we knew that this was a really, really good coach and we wanted to work with him. And it was kind of like the first day of practice and you're getting tested, and I didn't even have a partner. And I remember going to the coach and he said, you know, tough luck, find your own partner. And I was walking over to my mom who was sitting on the edge of the mat, you know, with all the other parents. And I was about to cry and I'm like, Mom, I don't have a partner. And she said, I can't help you. And she walked out. And so it was, yeah, it was pretty cool.
And turns out, right decision by mom, right?
Yeah.
Self-efficacy is helping kids learn how to fix problems on their own. We do this in a safe environment. Obviously, we don't want them to try to figure out how to fix an airplane in mid-flight, but in small ways like this, we can help them develop that confidence. Let's check out the next video.
What I'm saying is that all of this comes at a long-term cost to their sense of self. What I'm saying is we should be less concerned with a specific set of colleges they might be able to apply to or might get into, and far more concerned that they have the habits, the mindset, the skill set, the wellness to be successful wherever they go. What I'm saying is our kids need us to be a little less obsessed with grades and scores and a whole lot more interested in childhood providing a foundation for their success built on things like love and chores. Did I just say chores? Did I just say chores? I really did. But really, here's why. The longest longitudinal study of humans ever conducted is called the Harvard Grant Study. It found that professional success in life, which is what we want for our kids, that professional success in life comes from having done chores as a kid. And the earlier you started, the better. That a roll up your sleeves and pitch in mindset, a mindset that says, there's some unpleasant work, someone's got to do it, it might as well be me. A mindset that says, I will contribute my effort to the betterment of the whole. That's what gets you ahead in the workplace. Now, we all know this. You know this. We all know this. And yet, in the checklisted childhood, we absolve our kids of doing the work of chores around the house. And then they end up as young adults in the workplace, still waiting for a checklist. But it doesn't exist. And more importantly, lacking the impulse, the instinct to roll up their sleeves and pitch in and look around and wonder, how can I be useful to my colleagues? How can I anticipate a few steps ahead to what my boss might need? A second very important finding from the Harvard Grant Study said that happiness in life comes from love. Not love of work, love of humans. Our spouse, our partner, our friends, our family. So childhood needs to teach our kids how to love, and they can't love others if they don't first love themselves, and they won't love themselves if we can't offer them unconditional love. Right. And so, instead of being obsessed with grades and scores when they come home, when our precious offspring come home from school or we come home from work, we need to close our technology, put away our phones, and look them in the eye and let them see the joy that fills our faces when we see our child for the first time in a few hours. And then we have to say, how was your day? What did you like about today? And when your teenage daughter says lunch, like mine did, and I want to hear about the math test, not lunch, you have to still take an interest in lunch. You got to say, what was great about lunch today? They need to know they matter to us as humans, not because of their GPA. All right, so you're thinking chores and love, that sounds all well and good, but give me a break. The colleges want to see top scores and grades and accolades and awards, and I'm going to tell you, sorta. The very biggest brand name schools are asking that of our young adults. But here's the good news. Contrary to what the college rankings racket would have us believe, you don't have to go to one of the biggest brand name schools to be happy and successful in life. Happy and successful people went to state school, went to a small college no one has heard of, went to community college, went to a college over here and flunked out. The evidence is in this room, is in our communities, that this is the truth. And if we could widen our blinders and be willing to look at a few more colleges, maybe remove our own egos from the equation, we could accept and embrace this truth and then realize it is hardly the end of the world if our kids don't go to one of those big brand name schools. And more importantly, if their childhood has not been lived according to a tyrannical checklist then when they get to college, whichever one it is, well, they'll have gone there on their own volition, fueled by their own desire, capable and ready to thrive there. I have to admit something to you. I've got 2 kids I mentioned, Sawyer and Avery. They're teenagers. And once upon a time, I think I was treating my Sawyer and Avery like little bonsai trees that I was going to carefully clip and prune and shape into some perfect form of a human that might just be perfect enough to warrant them admission to one of the most highly selective colleges. But I've come to realize, after working with thousands of other people's kids and raising 2 kids of my own, my kids aren't bonsai trees. They're wildflowers of an unknown genus and species. And it's my job to provide a nourishing environment, to strengthen them through chores, and to love them so they can love others and receive love. And the college, the major, the career, that's up to them. My job is not to make them become what I would have them become, but to support them in becoming their glorious selves. Thank you.
What do you want your child to take away from their youth sports experience? Does this goal match the coaching philosophy that you wrote at the end of module number 2? If not, go ahead and make some changes to your coaching philosophy now. A great coaching philosophy changes as you gain experience.